All right, I welcome you to another episode of Learning Stories. This is an audio and video show where I interview a diverse set of learners from the 21st century. On each episode of this show, I interview a guest who has a story to share about how they acquired a set of skills and knowledge in a creative and innovative manner. In the process, I hope to uncover a new understanding of learning as conceptualized, imagined, and narrated by the guest in our show. More recently, this show has taken on a new shape. I've realized that there's so much more to people beyond their learning stories. And I've slowly come to realize that if you truly deeply understand one individual, the truths about a lot of individuals do emerge. And this is actually a quote from Robert Caro. So today's interview is with Tanmayee Thakur. So a little bit about Tanmayee. I'm really excited about this interview before we jump into this conversation. So Tanmay or Tanu recently opened Book Garden, a bookshop and reading room in Villeparle, Mumbai. If you are in Mumbai and you want to read a book or buy a book, you can visit the store from Tuesday to Sunday from 2 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Today, Tanu is here to talk about her journey as a reader, writer, and bookstore owner in India. I'm really excited for this because I've visited the bookstore several times and it's honestly one of my favorite bookshops in Bombay. Tanu has spent a lot of time curating the collection, which is what I think makes the bookshop special. And there are so many other little things that she does to really enhance your experience as a reader. For instance, when I bought my first book, I've bought a couple now. She actually packaged my book and I had a little sticker with my name on it. And she had some great recommendations. So, Tanu, to jump into this conversation, I, I'm also going to be linking your Instagram handle in the show notes so people can see what a great creator you are apart from being a bookstore owner. But there's a lot of articles that have been written about the shop, and you've been doing some interviews. But I want to dial it back a little bit. I know you have the bookshop today, but what was Tanu like as a child growing up? That's the first question I always start the show with. And I'm just curious about what were some of the things you were interested in at school, outside school. What did you enjoy doing with your friends? So just some stories from your childhood to start off with.
Um, Okay, and before I do it, just quickly want to say thank you for having me on your show. I've seen your stuff, and we've obviously have spoken outside of it, and you always ask the most interesting questions. So I'm really looking forward to doing this. About my childhood, I was a very loud, boisterous kid. There was a lot of chaotic energy. I was always like, football, basketball, bullying, all the other. I mean, not like in a bad way. There is no good bullying, is there? I guess what I meant to say is that I was more than happy to take charge and, kind of relay the entire gang. So I was very loud as a kid. I would say till about I was in the single digits. And then once I entered, the double digit 10, age 10 onwards, I think my family felt the need to control the storm a little bit. And so I obviously had been around books a lot because my grandfather was a voracious reader and he kind of had passed it down to my dad, but I was too busy in play to really pick it up. But then they were just like, there are things you can do instead of breaking things and graffitiing things and, causing a havoc around. Here's a book. Why don't you consider this? And from the first book, I was sucked into that world. And then I never quite left. So now the demure Tanu that you see is all thanks to literature. I think I still would have been very chaotic without the influence of
And
all of
like,
the
do
books
you
that I've read.
remember like the first books that
But yeah,
really had
that
that
was my
impact on
childhood.
you, or was it because, like, for me growing up, I remember watching my sister read a lot, and for I think till the 10th or 11th grade, I didn't enjoy reading, but she gave me a book um, about these athletes or this tribe in Mexico that loved running, and the book was called Born to Run. And I enjoyed sports, and I was reading a book about sports, and that's when that connection happened. So do you have like a story about where that sort of started for you, or was
Yeah.
it a bunch of different books for you?
So I think the first ever book that I read was my dad. For some reason, like I said, I must have been 9 or 10. He had no business giving me that book, but he gave me Gitanjali by Rabindranath Tagore. Okay, I know adults who can't grasp that book, so I don't know why he bestowed upon me the honor of such heavy literature. But I think the reason that book made such an impact on me was, even though there was so much, I was seeing words like serene and tranquility. Yeah, I mean, at 9 years old, what do you know about words like that, right? So there was not a lot of I don't think there was a lot of conscious understanding of what was going on in the text. But I would kind of like mouth the words, and I would ask dad what they meant. And it was, I liked, if you've read Rabindranath Tagore and Gitanjali in particular, it's a very meditative book, It's more than poetry. It's very, there's a certain calmness to it, and a sort of, I think the best way I can describe it is when you read that book in particular, you feel like you're in a boat getting rocked to sleep. I think that's the effect. Like I said, I was a very chaotic child, right? So I think reading that, it was the first time I'd experienced something like this. And through words by a person who at that point had been dead for 100 years already. So it was really mind blowing to experience all of that at a very young age of 9 or 10. So I would say Gitanjali had the most impact on me. And then Paulo Coelho was big that time, right? The Alchemist had sort of, I don't know if it had come out or it had been a few years, but like reading The Alchemist was a thing. Again, now it's a book that's there's a storyline going on it, but there are a lot of spiritual, themes that you have to dig deeper. I don't think I understood what The Alchemist was about when I read it. It wasn't until much later that I truly grasped that whole concept of what you're looking for is right there and it's within. You don't really clock that in the first read, especially if you're reading it so young. But there was a certain way in which that book hypnotized you. I just picked it up and I couldn't put it down. And since you're a reader too, you know, this feeling when you just get sucked into the world of a book and you're only stopping to maybe grab a meal, sometimes not even that, because you're just like eating like that to it. Like that feeling, to just completely be enveloped in the world of the book is an amazing one. And I think that's the feeling that I chase again and again. Every reader
That's
chases
a
again and again. I think I
yeah,
diverged, but what was the
like, and
question?
I completely
The
get
two
that, Tanu,
books.
because I
That
feel like
those would be the two
sometimes,
books, the initial books.
like I when sometimes I chat with my friends about why they read, and I feel like the answers are so different and so subjective, and I feel like at different points in your life you have different reasons. Sometimes you just want an escape, sometimes you want to connect with someone because you're not able to find those sort of connections in your own life. Sometimes you're curious about an idea, and you know maybe something you want to work on at work or in your personal life. So there are so many possible outlets, for books and what they can offer you. But growing up in Bombay, like how did you access books? I remember you mentioning that you had a lot of books at home, but like fortunately or I think more unfortunately, we don't have a very active public library system in a city like Mumbai, which is quite surprising. And I remember when I did university here for 6 or 7 years, I would you know, I was so hungry for books, but there were very few libraries, and I got a membership at Asiatic Society in town, which also took me like 2 months because they needed like three or four recommendations. And so, how did you access books, and do you have any memories of visiting bookstores when you were like younger?
So I think the first thing you said it in your question itself. I did have an access to a library of my own, which was my grandfather's, and I will forever be thankful to him for that. I mean, He was the kind of madman who had a bed in the center of the room, and all of the four walls were filled with books from, like, bottom to ceiling. So not everybody gets that, and I'm very thankful that I did, right? Secondly, I have the area that I live in, Vileparle East to be particular, to thank, because we actually had a very strong reading culture growing up. I was under the assumption that every area did, but apparently not. We have this place called the Tirak Library, and it's there till date, and so many people still in Parla have little Tirak Library membership cards. So this area in general was a very literature forward, literature driven area. There was also this bookstore called Bookworm when I was growing up. It was a few buildings away from mine. I've been trying to find out who the owner was. It you know uh, it closed shutters a couple of years after it opened up. But I really want to thank that person, because being able to go to that store every week and picking up fresh titles and then going back home and reading them, and it was amazing. So I'm actually on a this is a side note, but I'm on a quest to find the owner of Bookmark, because when I do, I want to Bookworm, sorry, I want to go up to them and be like, thank you, you're the reason I am also doing it now, and also that I get it. It must have been so hard. And crossword was, I think, kind of one of the mainstream bookstores. I think for your birthday, getting crossword coupons was way better than getting some dress or some doll or something like that, right? Like, after a certain point, everybody knows Tanuka birthday crossword coupons. I think it's like
Right. So,
it's a
what about your
no-brainer,
friends, Tanu? Like,
So
were
I
they
think all of
all
these
readers
places,
as well,
I
or
would say.
like at school, what were the conversations around books really about? And like, did you feel like, yeah, sorry. No, I'm just curious.
I
Like, did you feel like, uh,
No, sorry,
because you
please
had this
complete
rich
your sentence.
environment at home, and sometimes, like, school can also be an avenue, and we do study English
Yeah.
like throughout in most streams in India. So, did you feel like there were stories and writers that you connected with through school, or
I don't think my school had a very active part to play. Like I said, I think in my area, like all the kids, you go down to play and all, right? So I think because everybody was going, whether it was to Tirak Library or to the bookstore in Parla, I think my building friends is what we call them, right? Like my building friends and I would like discuss books and stuff like that. But at school, I wouldn't say the conversation was around books a lot. I think at school it was more like homework kiya kya and all of that. Um, I actually after a point would with my librarian I would discuss things. Um, but I don't think there were a lot of kids that were interested in reading in general. So that was not really a topic of conversation. It wasn't until much later in life that I found friends who also liked reading, and so we would discuss them. Um, Also, I feel I, as a person, I'm about to say something very blasphemous, but I don't particularly enjoy discussing once I've read something. I understand that that's a very common practice and people like to do that. But for me, a book is a very personal experience. I want to experience it and then I move on. It's very rare that I think the only time I've discussed a book is where if towards the end I just went, huh? What did what what does that mean? And then you end up like Googling it, like what does the writer mean by that? Or like unless confusion is the final feeling in the
well,
book, I'm not somebody who particularly goes around discussing them.
it's very
But
interesting
that's
because
also
I'm
just my
I'm wondering
introverted
what it's
nature.
like when
Let's
people
chalk it
come
up
into the
to that.
store and they ask you for book recommendations and they ask you what have you read, and it's interesting to think. I feel like we have such unique lives as readers, because I feel like I'm a little bit on the other end of the spectrum, and I do use websites like Goodreads or like opportunities like Jew reads to talk to people about books, because um,
Mhm.
I feel like I have a personal experience, but sometimes when I share something about the book with someone else, I'm just curious about their interpretation of the same thought. And I feel like the book has a longer life through that discussion for me. And I also like looking at how different authors from different countries or different stories sort of looked at the same theme but in a different way. And I think that intermeshing is what sometimes I think about. But yeah, and I feel like
Yeah.
what about, like what was your time? Because I remember reading this CSR interview, CSR journal interview recently, where the interviewer said that you had a lot of odd jobs all leading up to this dream of opening up your bookstore. So, like after high school, was there like a dream or hope of of
Yeah.
pursuing a certain career, or was it always like the bookshop for you, Tanvi?
Um, I think, tell me one reader who hasn't thought about opening up their bookshop. Show me one. That doesn't exist. Okay, that doesn't exist. Even if fleetingly. But of course, I'd always thought about opening up a bookshop. I think this was something I was working towards in my own ways all along. But for some reason, see, firstly, human beings are very simple, okay? What do all of us want to do? We want to earn a little bit of money. And in our 40s, we want to move to the mountains and open up a cafe or bookstore or something like that, okay? And this comes from all of us living in this otherwise very rushed world, you know. So these dreams have become like these sort of pipe dreams that we almost kind of use. They become like a light in the distance that we use to get through our rather chaotic and rushed lives in a day-to-day sense. There were a couple of personal losses that I had, um, that kind of just opened my eyes to the fact that what if I don't live to a 40 and I never get to make that dream? A little morbid, but the most honest answer I can give you. Okay. Um, I just realized this would be one regret, that I would go to heaven or maybe hell. Who am I to judge? And I didn't want to pass away with any regrets, and this would be the one thing that would happen to me. So that's when I decided, okay, we just got to do it. When, even if you can't, let's just open it and we'll see how it works out. The jobs leading up to this were, so I got my degree in screenwriting, which is basically writing for films and basically writing for screen. And I was in that industry for a bit. I was a proofreader. Um, I've worked in the editing department. I've worked on shoots, and all of that was nice. The money was okay. It was also a creative field, not too far removed, still in the kind of literary sort of umbrella. But the bookstore was the always the beating heart of it all. And like I said, there were certain things that happened that made me just like, I'll continue. I still do write on the side, because the bookstore is, you have to be a little bit crazy to want to open a bookstore. Financially, not the most illustrious thing out there. So I do write on the side, but now I can't
And
imagine my life without
I
book
see so
art.
much
I'm
of that passion,
obsessed.
Tanu, coming
I'm
through in
obsessed.
not only the way you interact with customers, but also in the way you talk about the books in your store on your Instagram handle. I feel like it's amazing that, because sometimes I feel like when I do have like an intimate or a deep conversation with someone, or just a conversation where the person is really trying to relate to you, I feel like it does take some energy, but you're also giving energy, right? And I feel like you seem to have this ability to have that conversation so many times through the day, because for us, we're just one customer, but then we walk out and the next customer demands sort of the same attention. So I can't imagine that being, very easy. And I think you mentioned, like, maybe identifying as an introvert, like and also not, very openly talking about recommendations. So I'm just so fascinated by how you're bringing, this world together to bring a book garden to life. But yeah, there's a lot to think about there. But like, did you have any like other career like thoughts, like being a writer full time, or being a filmmaker? Was that like ever something you thought about along the way?
So, like I said, I was a writer full time. Now I am part time. But see, bookstore was always the go-to. But it felt like कि हाँ सबका एक ऐसा सपना होता है ना कि मैं एक्टर बनूंगा मैं ये like everybody has something that they want to kind of do at some point. It could be something like एक दिन मुझे Ferrari लेनी है or whatever. We all have that one thing that we want to do. So bookstore was always that for me. I think writing felt like the second best option. It was something I was good at. It paid decently. So it felt like I don't have a कि मैं इंजीनियर थी मेरे सारी मेरी क्रिएटिविटी मुझसे चली गई थी आई वाज स्टक इन सम यूजुअली आर्टिस्ट हैव दैट थिंग ना कि they're either in the science or the commerce field forced into it and then they find their way back to what they really wanted to do all along. मेरा ऐसा कुछ नहीं था मतलब मुझे बुक स्टोर चाहिए था and I was in the writing field so rather still creative outlet I had still comfortable. um so
Okay, it's like
I
a train
I
of thought.
I'm
Then
afraid I've
some of my questions.
completely lost track of the original question. Yeah, it really is. I must say you have this ability to just create a space where a person can just enter their stream of consciousness. It's good
Oh
for
no, it's
you, but
okay.
it's
Like it
not nice to
because
be on the
I feel
receiving
like
end because now I'm just
it's
blabbering and blabbering.
the way you're answering this question. It's so straightforward. Then you're just like a lot of people. They have so many bumps on their journey, but you're like, I became a writer. I mean, the writing was something I worked on, and I opened the. I mean, it seems so simple, and like I'm just curious. Is there the ideation, because I know there is like a technical part and the logistical part of opening a bookstore, right? Like the rent and everything. And I'm because I feel like the ideation part in your head, like were there like trips that you took, or like people that had bookstores that may have been like a sort of inspiration at the start, or it was just something that I think Ville Parle was probably an inspiration at the start, right? Tanu, like in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so obviously, yeah, it wasn't as straight a road as I'm portraying it to. See, I'll tell you what, okay? I feel like I walk a very fine line every day between, when someone comes in, they're like, I also want to have a bookstore. On one hand, I really want to preserve that feeling. I don't want to let them know how difficult it is or, that it's not as idyllic as it seems. I'm not saying there aren't moments that absolutely wash over you with gratitude and joy and peace, but there are moments where you will not want to do it, or,
It's
okay,
hard.
no, that's not true. I always want to do it but you want to do it, but like, yeah, a little bit of that. So there's always a fine line between like wanting to protect that and giving them a reality of things. Of course, there were a lot of bumps in the road. There's a lot of financial worry that I struggle with every day having a place like this, which is why I also work on the side apart from book garden. There are days where you're kind of sitting there and jotting down all your expenses, and the income is like and the expenses are like and you're just like you're looking at the disparity of that. Um, Even when it comes to so I am in an area that was for all of these years has been a jewelry stores area. The person who initially sort of owned, he kind of, I think declared bankruptcy or something like that, and then it got sold to who is my owner now. And I came in and people were like, "आप jewelry store खोल रहे हो?" I'm like, "नहीं, मैं bookstore खोल रही हूँ." And they were like, very. There was a lot of hesitation initially in the area around me. Firstly, I'm somebody who's on the younger side. I would like to say so. Uh, I'm a girl. That in itself is like, "अरे बाप रे, आप कहाँ business करने आ गए?" Stuff like that. So there was a lot that I dealt with, not only just in the area, a lot of friends and family that did kind of understand what I was trying to do. My father, God bless his heart, very supportive, but was also a little like, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" I don't think anybody apart from me understood what I was trying to do. Even now, there are people that come into the bookstore, and when they find out that the reading room aspect of it, it doesn't have a charge, they still are a little perplexed, and they kind of try to doubt my business abilities, or stuff like that. I could sit here and tell you what I'm trying to do, and I will in just a minute. But um, I think it's hard to understand because we have been so conditioned to take money from each other constantly. You know, People are like, "You're not charging for your reading room, it's not a financially viable decision." Yeah, okay. Let me make up for it by selling more books. Let me make up for it by having events, perhaps, where I charge. But I refuse to let anybody touch that reading room being free thing. Like, no, that's not happening. I want people to be able to go somewhere and sit and read without having to pay a dime. I find it ridiculous. Every time I step
Yeah,
out of the world, I'm having to pay something to somebody. Yaar. What kind of
yeah,
society have we built? You know, I I just don't agree with it. So it's not idyllic owning a bookstore. There are a lot of challenges. There's a lot of you know, there were a lot of health issues that I went through while building this place. Those I don't want to particularly get into. I think there are people that would like use it as a nice sob story to push their agenda, but I I'm just mentioning them so that this image that everything has been idyllic is not there. But I
sure,
don't
yeah,
want to get into them because then the conversation becomes about something else entirely. In a nutshell, anybody out there who wants to open a bookstore absolutely should. Okay? Absolutely should. But it's not the rosy thing that it's painted out to be. You're going to face very unique challenges. Um, but if you show the grace and the perseverance, it should be fine.
yeah.
Even
And
if there are
like
days
as
when you
as a
rip your
customer,
head out.
Tanu, I
Because
truly
best believe
believe
there
that
will
the
be.
reading room aspect is what makes the experience special for me, because I haven't had, because whenever I wanted to read earlier, and at least like in the area I stay in Jogeshwari, um, like the reading culture is not as strong. Like I don't have too many bookshops or secondhand bookstores, and I don't have too many friends that I can talk to with about books. So like I would always have to go to like a coffee shop, and even there's like an impulse to buy a coffee and then only sit and read, and then that's not sustainable over time, right? And the fact that I can sit in the shop, I think you're able to build a relationship with the
Yeah.
customer, and I genuinely feel like if I did want to buy a book, I'd come to Book Garden first now, rather than going to a larger bookshop that doesn't have that connection with me. And I feel like it does compound over
Yeah.
time, because that individual over their lifetime will buy, you never know, like, I don't know, like hundreds of books, right? And if you're able to truly build a strong relationship, I think that can become a
Mhm.
lifetime customer, and yeah, and like I also like, because I've come to the shop a couple of times, I do remember my first few times walking to the store was also an interesting experience, because I was trying to look for the store, and then there were lots of, as you said, jewelry stores. It was like a marketplace, and then that particular area has a lot of shops back to back, so there's also like a very stimulating environment, like people walking, and then even the age group of people, like when I went the first time, there were not as many young people as I maybe I see now. But
Yeah.
I think what was interesting was it was really close to the station. So people were walking around and they were walking, and then, if they stumble onto the store, that would be really nice. But like, I wanted to like break down that little bit about the logistical part of starting a bookstore. You mentioned it was earlier a jewelry store. So did you find out about this
Mhm.
particular jewelry store, and like how do you like how do you so you just sign a lease and you get the space, or do you have to scout for it? Like how does that happen?
Okay, sure. Yeah. So, the first thing I did was I went to a broker and I said, these are my specifications. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I can afford. That being the most important thing. तो वो पहले आप समझिए. And you start looking. There's this famous dialogue, right? कि मुंबई में भगवान मिल जाता है पर घर नहीं. But property is what they mean instead of घर. So I knew that that was going to be a long, drawn out process. So the first thing I did was I went to the broker. I let him know these are my requirements, and you start looking. While that was happening, I started picking up my books for the store because I'm very selective about what I bring in. I didn't want to. I mean, if you, so I could go up to any distributor and be like, okay, give me, whatever, 3,000 books, here's your money, and I start a book. That was not what I was trying to do. I was individually selecting the books, so it takes longer. So I started going to different book sales, started finding out about distributors. Now, like I said, I have no background, I have no understanding. It started with Google searches, distributors in Mumbai, whatever, you get in touch. There were a distributor or two that were a little hesitant, right? Because again, I say that I'm young, I'm a girl, I don't have any particular background, they don't understand what I'm trying to do. So there was a little bit of resistance there. So I was simultaneously picking up books and building relationships with distributors. Then looked at a couple of places, something or the other was not working out in all of them until I finally found this place. And it was this, oh my God, it was so ugly. I cannot even begin to tell you. There were like three different kinds of woods. It was dingy, it was dark. But there was something about the place, sometimes you just walk in and you just kind of know, okay, this is it. So that's what happened. Again, um, there was a lot of hesitation around the area, a lot of people that tried to convince my owner, my landlord, that, like, how is she going to manage to do this? Don't sort of, I don't, just give it to some other jeweler or, give it to like some eatery or something like something that you can bank on. But he is an amazing landlord, and I really want to thank him for it. I just sat him down and I said, "Look, I'm bringing the money. Don't worry about it. I will find one way or another to get it to you. But let me do something." So then we ended up signing the lease. Also, at this point, I had just kind of done bank work for myself and stuff like that. All of a sudden you're at the bank and you're filling out all of these new kind of forms you've never seen. You're registering your business. You have to then get made a, you need official stamps for your business. Then you have to design, अच्छा, what's your logo going to be? Forget all of that. What is the name? Up until then I'm saying bookstore, bookstore, bookstore. At one point I'm like, नाम ही नहीं है यार, इसको क्या नाम दूँ? Then I'm sitting in chat GPT. you know I'm a writer. I mean, like, my head will be on a pike for saying this, but sometimes even your brain is not. You're sitting there, like, what should I say? What should I say? So I have books, like 13 unique names for bookstores kind of articles are showing up on my. So it's all of this. Like, obviously, I landed up on sort of book garden because I think it made it sound like what the space would look like and feel like. So it felt right. That also, the name Book Garden just came to me I was boarding a flight to somewhere. And I was walking up the stairs and it just like, God, like very random, almost like I don't know, it was just handed to me, just like this. I'm somebody who believes in these things. It's so ironic because you were asking me the logistics of things, and I've like put some Sufism into it. But I do believe that
Mm.
uh, if you set the intention and if it's meant to be yours, it works out one way or another. So point is, through all of this, finding a place, getting the money for it, logos and branding, you know, it's been difficult,
Yeah, and
but
I feel like that's the
in
part that
hindsight,
maybe a lot of
also worked
people
out rather well.
don't always see, right? And I feel like there is that part that you have to navigate as a bookstore owner and understand really well for your particular business, because like some of the people that will listen to this, they may
Yeah,
want to open their own stores in a different part of the country. I feel like you also understood that particular area really well. And I think
yeah,
some of the smart things I feel like you did was like not taking up too many books and curating that collection, because I think that could also become like really overwhelming. And in terms of the aesthetic of the store, like white walls, and I feel like you have a little bit of you sprinkled across the entire store. And I remember seeing an earlier post where you had shown like your room and then you showed the store, and there was like a little bit of a similarity. So why the white walls, and why the I don't know, what is it, turquoise? Is that the color of the sofa? Like what, like why that furniture and why the walls in that particular color?
yeah, yeah. So the books obviously like bring their own color. So I knew that a lot of color was already going to be going on. So I didn't want to bring more color onto the walls as well. I think white just because I wanted to give it it becomes a bit of like a easy seamless palette then for the books to then be the main thing. If you have blue, red, and green walls, and then the books are also purple, red, and yellow, it's too much. It's too much for the eye. Also, I feel like what I'm trying to achieve with this space is I wanted to feel like when you walk in here that you can take a deep breath and just be. And I think if the colors are too loud, it's going to be difficult to do that. I think the white really sort of adds to the calmness of the space. As for the furniture, you need to understand that all of my money is tied up in rent and inventory. So this is ghar ka saman. My house kept getting emptier as the bookstore kept getting like my dad would come back and be like, आज क्या गया है घर से? एक sofa उठा लिया, एक lamp उठा लिया, एक ये उठा लिया. I reached out to my friends. I said, does anybody have like, any furniture that they're not using, any lamp or whatever, a chair, or just it's been a community project in that sense, like at least when it comes to the furnishings. So many of the little flowers and like lamps and stuff you see are things that my loved ones sort of gave me, which is also I really like because it feels like they're here with me every day. Um, so to answer your question, the design philosophy of this place was I don't want it to feel like a store. I want you to feel like you're going to a friend's house and you can put your feet up on the sofa and just read, just be, to create a space where you can just be. And it's hard if it's getting registered as a store, right? Because then you have to wear your mask and act all prim and proper. But when you go to your friend's house, you just put the bag on the floor and you just crash on their bed and you're just like, क्या किया आज मेरा दिन तो बहुत खराब था तेरा क्या-" That's the energy I want. That's the energy I want. So when I see somebody, sit on the sofa with their feet up. The other day, when one kid came with his mother, and while she read, he just took a nap on the floor. I was like, amazing. This moment is why I built this. I want people to feel that way. They can be that way, which is why if somebody is in the store, I'm going out to get my evening dose of chai, I'll always ask, does anybody want chai or something? The first couple of times people were wondering if I'm going to then charge them for the chai. It's 10 rupees. मैं क्या कमा लूंगी उसमें? You should feel like I've just come. I can just be for as long as I want. Okay, well, technically till 7:30 p.m., but as long as I want until 7:30 p.m. And that feeling. So I think the design philosophy needed to reflect that. That's also why I have like framed pictures of, you know, myself and some loved family members up
I feel
on
like it's nice that you have
the
a
beams and
space for
stuff like that. I
yourself in the
want it to
store
feel
as well.
homely.
I think that, like, because you're having all these conversations, sometimes I think you need to also have, I feel like, a space where you can, go and read, because I noticed you also read quite a bit in the store through the day, don't you? Tanu? Like, and like, what about that poster in the front of your shop, Mary? Like, who is this? Yeah, I feel like that's the real influencer of your store. So where did that come from?
Infamous, very.
Yeah.
That's so well put. Oh my God, can I please steal that? I will like credit you. But yeah, you're right. She is my influencer. Okay, firstly, thank you for asking about Mary. You're a G for that. Okay, like really, I appreciate it so much. I actually have a tradition every morning when I open the shutters. The first thing I do is like I put a hand on her and I'm like, good morning. And every day when I close the shop, I'm like, okay, good night. I think the people around just think I'm like bonkers, and I probably am to speak to a poster, right? But the story behind her is that I opened up, ठीक है, book garden board वगैरह लगाया है, books है, but people that were passing by didn't exactly understand what was going on. And I felt like I needed to put up some sort of creative out front when you're passing by, just what in 2, 3 seconds can I give to you that will make you want to come in? So I was just online. I was deciding. I was like, okay, I'll put like, do you like to read new, old, and used books inside? So I had my caption and all ready. I was like, what's the visual? Like something okay, so book garden, so has to be reading related. And for some reason, I just wanted a female. I mean, nothing against the male gender. I just think God Himself, it's like, look at us females, man. God really cooked with us. Like, it catches your eye. It does. It does. There's no denying it. So I was just scrolling online and I found that image and there was something very striking about her. There was also the Victorian aesthetic that I personally love, which you don't get to see a lot. So just because of that, you notice it when you do come across it, right? She didn't have a book in her hand that's been photoshopped. But yeah, I just kind of placed her in the middle of all the text and it just made sense. And she gets so many eyeballs. Every time people are walking by, like, again, you have to understand all the people, the young sort of people that end up coming, come via Instagram and word of mouth and stuff like that. But a lot of the other people that come by are people that have come to Parla market. And that age group is slightly older. There are people from this area. Uh, so so many times a really old woman will be passing by and she'll tug at her husband's shirt as soon as she sees Mary and she's like, "Aho te baga, kodeti," stuff like that. She starts a lot of conversations. So yeah, that's her story. And yeah, you're right. She is the OG book garden
Yeah, and
influence.
like
I'm so
that piece then
stealing
you
that.
said about
Thank you. That's a
Instagram,
brilliant way to
and then
put
even
it.
that
Yeah.
story about the older person walking by, I feel like your target audience seems like quite large, but do you have different strategies to address like these different target audiences? Because like where did the idea of using Instagram sort of as a
Yeah.
like why do you think Instagram is effective as a way to reach out to new readers according to you?
Uh,
Mhm.
I why? Because those are the times we live in. Unfortunately, I joke about this with my friends all the time. Just say someday if Book Garden reaches a stage where it no longer needs social media, that account will be gone. I am not attached to it in any particular manner. It's a means to an end for me. We just live in a world where there is an Instagram profile for everything, from your dog to your like just a hobby that you're pursuing. I think humans, and obviously all businesses, it's a given. I think we as human beings like to document. Um, so that's from the inward to outward angle. And from the other angle, which is in terms of consumption, I think the strategy with book garden social media is simple. One aspect of it is the book recommendations that I do, just to let you know what's in the store. Um, the other is what gets social book garden social media the eyeballs is it's this story of a girl who's running a bookstore. Oh, it seems so nice, and you always will get attracted to a story. Um, you have to use it to your advantage. You know, um, there are a lot of people that the other day a girl came in, right, and so books in general are also on an upward trend. It's get becoming cool to read. I don't know how long it's going to last for. Do I support a trend for the sake of a trend? No, but I'm also a bookstore owner. I have to ride it, right? So she came to the store and all she did for 20 minutes was take photos with the books so that it could go onto her profile, I'm guessing, right? So now I could sit here and be all idealistic about it and be like, no photos allowed, you can't post these. Or I can understand the fact that her posting them just might reach a couple of people that do read and will be curious about the space and will end up coming. So social media can definitely contribute to actual sales eventually, It's just it's just something you have to keep building and feeding every day actually. And eventually it does translate to sales. It's just the kind of world we live in. So if you're just an individual, you can't go out there and change things. So you might as well bank on the things you can
Yeah, and
and
I,
get your
I
due
found
out
like
of it.
another book
If
from
you
one
can
of your
manipulate
videos.
them,
The
do
I
so.
recently bought a book about Mona Lisa and the painting, and I thought I wouldn't find that if I didn't see one of the videos that you
Yeah.
put up. And like, I had a question about stories because how long has it been since you opened the store now, Tanam? 3 months, got it. So
We
like,
were very new. We opened on the 7th
so
of
you've probably
October, so
spoken
about
to
three
like
months now.
hundreds or I don't know, maybe
Three,
thousands
four
of
months, yeah.
people. So, like, without revealing names, do you remember certain conversations or stories that you'd be comfortable sharing? And like something that they shared, maybe about books or about life in general, that was was surprising, or even maybe I don't know, like sad in a way, or whatever you're comfortable sharing.
So many, you're right, so many that it's difficult. I think a couple that come to mind are there was this one girl who found out that I sort of wrapped the books and stamped the names of the people and stuff like that. And she came over, we had a conversation, and she told me her name, of course. And while I was stamping the book, she said, "Can you stamp Amma?" Which is obviously a word for mother. And I was stamping the book, and I said, "Oh, that's amazing that you're getting her a gift. And does she like to read?" And I can't give you a definitive answer, but there was something about her, the way she was reacting to my questions about her mother, that gave me a feeling that her mother is no more or estranged. Either way, but they're not in, right? And obviously she didn't feel comfortable enough to share it directly, so I didn't want to broach it. As the conversation progressed, I just got a feeling that okay, it's not even an estranged thing. I think her mother is passed away because she slowly started referring to her in the past tense. um that stayed with me because I mean, while she was going, I just sort of handed her a book and we just exchanged a sort of knowing smile, is the best way I can put it. That stayed with me because why does someone want to stamp their deceased mother's name on a book? They're obviously they can't give their mom that book. But it's some sort of, maybe her mother liked to read, maybe her mother was the one who introduced her to books, or I don't know the exact story. I didn't ask unless she wanted to share. But it was so sweet that she wanted to do that. That stayed with me a lot. I think about her a lot. I hope she's doing better about all of that. Because I know it's such a heavy cross to bear, to outlive a parent. So that story stays a lot with me. I feel very grateful that in whatever way she made me a part of her mother's remembrance. I get teary-eyed every time I think about it, but it was very touching. Um, Another story that comes to my mind was there was this girl who was making a. Do you know what a book bouquet is? So it's basically when you get your partner, or actually, why does it have to be a partner? You could give to anybody, but just like a bouquet of flowers. You also put the flowers in the bouquet, but you also put books, so it becomes like this giant. It's called a book bouquet. And I'd heard of the concept, but this girl sort of came in and she said, "I want to make a book bouquet for my fiance," and I was like, "Girl, say no more. I was born for this day," and we just spent an entire afternoon picking out books that he would like, and then I sort of, obviously like gift wrap them. And she didn't live here. She lived in America, I believe. She was on holiday here, and when she went back, she sent me a picture of the bouquet that she did make for him with, the rest of the flowers and the books, and it was so nice to see that. Also to know that something from my store went all the way to the States, like that felt amazing. So yeah, I think very honestly, Abhishek, we could be on this call for like 4 more hours because I do have so many stories from people of different, genders, different age groups, different like social backgrounds. Every day there's going to be something, and I look forward to it. Because basically when you're going to a bookstore, I think the energy is a little different. You're willing to indulge, you're willing to open up. So I end up experiencing the full spectrum of human emotions on a day-to-day basis, very honestly.
Does it
I've
does it
been very
get
grateful
tiring
to
for
be a
you
part of some
sometimes? Like
wonderful
when
stories. Yeah.
you know, because you are giving a lot of yourself in some of these conversations. I don't know if you want to look at it as a chore as well, but I think you're completely present with this other individual, and I think sometimes people can share things or maybe not share things. Some of these conversations may also just be, I'm here to help you if you need something. So do you feel like there's something you do to center yourself again, or like find, or is that something you think you need, or it's just something that brings you energy throughout?
So firstly, wow, what an amazing nuanced thing you have got. Thank you. I feel very seen. I don't think it wasn't even until very recently that I started realizing the need to center myself a little at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. Yeah, I do try to be as present as I can, and everybody needs you on different levels. With some people, it stays just at the recommendation level. At some people, it does end up going deeper. And I haven't quite figured out what causes that vulnerability. I think at some point, I do want to meet another bookstore owner and ask if that's the case, and how they navigate it. I think this space being a small space, and just like I said, by the design of it and the look of it, I think that might play a part in people opening up as much as they do. But yeah, it does get difficult on some days. um there was this really young girl that came in. She was a minor. She was about 17 years old, and she was asking for very like her book list was, lots of like old depressing Russian literature, and a lot of the kind of books you would look for if you are trying to understand grand things like the meaning of life. And I found her list to be very advanced and commendable that was advanced, but like, why are you reading it? You don't need to read mythos. It's amazing that you want to. This is not your age. You haven't experienced life enough to grasp the nature of it. A book like Myth of Sisyphus, I think I personally don't recommend it to young
Yeah,
readers because it can be
yeah,
understood as a negative book at that age. It's not. He's actually telling you that as long as you have the power to start again and realize that you can start again as many times as you want to, the that's the gift. That is your power. Exercise that. But
yeah,
that's not,
yeah,
I think, an assumption you'll come to if you read that book at a very young age. Right? So I sort of ended up asking her what was going on, and I'm obviously won't get into the details of it, but she opened up about some of the struggles that she was going through. I think showing someone the books you've read or the books you're planning to read is is a lot more naked than it seems. You do end up telling the other person a lot about who you are. So just by being in the business that I am exposed to a lot of things like that. And yeah, I didn't do it up until now, but I have now started just taking a few moments to center myself because you do end up interacting with everybody on a on a deeper uh, tangent than you mostly
yeah.
would
Yeah,
in,
thanks
say,
for
a
sharing
corporate
that,
nine to
Tanu.
five
And
job, so to
again,
speak.
thanks for making time for this, Tanu. I know the bookshop's going to be opening soon, so if someone's going to listen to this and they come to the shop, I mean, it'll be nice to extend this conversation there. But for the last question, Tanu, like I'm thinking, like we're 4 months into Book Garden now. Like you have, manifested this, brought this to life, and you have, you know, given that space to so many people over these first 4 months. Like, because I'm thinking, like, if you see this conversation 1 year from now, where where do you I don't know if you are someone that's like do you think about things like manifesting like things, or like do you feel like you have any dreams or like goals for the store, like 1 year down the line or 2 years down the line, or like what is that picture like, or is it something you want to be surprised by and let it unfold as it comes?
Uh, One dream would just to be here. It's difficult to sustain this. So I think if a year from now I'm still around, I would love that. Very much so. Um, I think the other dream that I would have, which is something I try to do every day, I try to achieve with the store every day, is just to make people feel like they have a place where they can just come to rest. I think that's very important uh, to me. There are a lot of books that I wouldn't even say a lot. I think every book has the ability to make you sane depending on where you are in your life and if it's found you at the right time. But every book holds that power. So if you think about it, I'm surrounded by so much power right now. Every book has the ability to change your life, if put at the right point. So just by that sheer logic, I'm in a very magical place right now. So I hope I'm able to, keep it around for as long as I possibly can, because to be able to do that
Yeah, thank
for
you, Tanu.
people
Thank you for
would be
making
an
that
honor
space. And
and a
on that
privilege.
note, we come to the end of this episode of Learning Stories. Again, just for the people tuning in, this is such an amazing bookstore. It's one of my favorite bookstores. I highly, highly recommend it. And I know Tanu's already have, like Tanu does have like Book Garden has a very active Instagram handle that you can follow. There are posts, there are reels, and Tanu's really herself, and she shares her love for books. But you do get updates about new books that are coming out in the store and the different kinds of books. And I think there's also a very unique way uh, for how Tanu keeps and arranges her books. So it's really a really nice experience that I enjoy as a reader. And it's open Tuesday to Sunday from 2 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And they have some events coming up as well. So yeah, there's a lot happening. So Tanu, thank you again for making time for this. And Any last words you'd like to say to future readers coming into the store? Like, or any?
Uh, Come on a day when you aren't rushed, and come without a book list, because there are a lot of bookstores that will take care of that. I think it would be better if you came here and just went through the collection and allowed it to surprise you. I think that would be a better bet. And also, before we close, Abhishek, I just want to say that I have obviously had a chance to speak to many people about my journey, but the kind of inquisitive, nuanced questions you asked were just I really enjoyed this experience thoroughly, and you're so good at what you do, and I just hope more and more people listen to the stuff that you put out, and also more and more people have a chance to be interviewed by you, because this is what it's supposed to feel like. It feels so great to be seen for all of your nuances, and be sort of asked the right questions without it being too intrusive but also inquisitive. It's such a fine line to walk on, and you do it
Thank you, Tanman.
amazingly.
For
So
the
thank you.
listeners
It's
tuning in,
it's been a pleasure talking to you.
do subscribe to the podcast. We're available on Spotify and YouTube. And until next time, keep learning.